Good evening and welcome to United Soccer FC version 2022. It's been a while. How have you been? I'm sure this will be a shock to some of you. I know most of you listen to the to the podcast version, which is probably what this is for, but I put it on here since I have the technology to do it. So, lots to talk about here. First part I'm going to talk about is NISA. Protagonist Soccer came out with what they're calling their NISA Water Cooler Chatter by Dan Vaughn, who does an excellent job, and I'm a huge supporter of Protagonist Soccer. They do a wonderful job with NISA and other things along those lines here. So a couple of things that came out in that article. Number one, the Stumptown situation. There were rumors how players were treated and pay and there was a sale of the club and stuff like that. Which, yes, it's important. It was a league-owned club, so that's something to keep in mind for that as well. Here is last year they ran as league-owned in NISA, which I thought was kind of odd because they're about independence. They're about, hey, it's anybody can be in it. And the players got paid. That's the most important thing. It may have been a couple of days late, which is not cool by any means. But it wasn't. It's not as bad as I think a lot of teams portrayed it. Also, there was an issue about the Stumptown budget. That hey, it was a shoestring budget. When it comes to budgets, as fans, we have no idea. Whether it's USL, whether it's NISA, whether it's MLS Next, teams that you think that are paying well may not be paying as much as people think, and teams that aren't paying as much may have to overpay a little bit more to get players to go there. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. That be careful on the budget talk. That's all I'm going to say here. But to me, the big the big thing about NISA is the changes. And then Dan Vaughn and Protagonist Soccer came out with kind of a an update of what they know, which some I had heard whispers through the grapevine, and some just completely blew me away. I'm not going to lie to you for that here. So number one, earlier this week, Detroit City and NISA came to an agreement. Basically it was a payout for they reached an agreement to pay off, Detroit City to pay off NISA for leaving the league and going to the USL Championship. I think NISA had submitted. Detroit City was going to be playing in NISA this upcoming season. Maybe NISA saw a little bit, Detroit City saw a little bit of the writing on the wall. I hopefully have a little bit more discussion on Detroit City coming up in the future. But, I guess according to Dan Vaughn, for breaking the contract, there supposedly is a penalty between about 1 to 2.5 million, and some NISA representative or board members wanted to go for the full amount, go for the throat. Some were smarter and probably the wiser and the better decision, reached a settlement. We don't know the exact amount, but it's probably not the 7 figures that they want. It's probably 6 figures for that here, which I think is a good deal for everybody. There's a lot of different avenues that they could have, because Detroit City could technically still field a team in NISA. The quality of that team, could it have just been a bunch of kids out there, or could they went out and tried to make a statement? Either way, it wasn't a good look. Not necessarily for Detroit City, but for NISA. If you're going to say, hey, independent, teams can come, teams can go as you want, and I know they mean more with promotion rail, pro rail, which is what I want. for it here. So they're out from last year. Stumptown, kind of surprising to me that they're out, because the rumors were that they sold to FC Carolinas, which is an academy structured team, and I know they kind of went into a little bit of details of something about the debt and wanting NISA to kind of help finance it a little bit longer. NISA said no, so they said take a year off. Not to me, it's bad that a team's taking a team off, but especially if they're going to rebrand. It's what the Bold are doing. The Bold sold to another owner. They're going to most likely relocate now. The question is what happens with Stumptown. I don't think they're leaving the area, but I don't know if they're going to be playing at the same field. Obviously, they're going to be doing a rebrand again, for that here. The one that kind of surprised me, because I heard rumors that it was going to be the Michigan Stars that was maybe sitting out. But no, it sounds like New Amsterdam was out, based on the reporting by Protagonist Soccer here, that they were out. Now they're kind of back in on the fence. And I don't think a lot of people realize this, that Chicago House is also owned by the Gerard family, which is supposed to be a no-no, but, the husband owns one, the wife owns the other. And Chicago House is a big deal to me. Chicago is an attractive market for a lower league team. Let's be honest, the Fire, not exactly hitting it very well in MLS. And it's not so much performance sucks, don't get me wrong, but it's off field and a whole lot of other things that they missed out on. Chicago House moved into the old stadium of the Fire, which I understand, hey, it's nice to be able to move into a nice facility like that, but having 500, 1,000 people in a stadium that was an MLS stadium, so 15,000-ish, we'll say. I didn't look up the specific numbers of it. It wasn't a good look, for that here. But looking at the article here, the House had cut, almost all the front office in December. Have seen, additions, go down to Chattanooga and other clubs. So, from the article from Protagonist Soccer, they said it's 50-50 on really is if it's one or none, between Chicago House and New Amsterdam, which kind of sucks. And that's why we don't, that's why we shouldn't have owners from the same family owning multiple teams in a set league, along those lines. The remaining teams for here, so you had Chattanooga, you had Maryland Bobcats, you had the Stars, which I talked about earlier, which I thought might be one of the teams going out, just from whispers that I heard. Cal United, LA Force, and OP4 rebranded to Albion for here, another academy structured team. I've seen player signings from Chattanooga. I've seen player signings for, from the Bobcats. And I think Cal United's also been out there. LA Force and the Albanian team, haven't heard a single thing. And to me, that's my biggest frustration with NISA, is the inconsistency between the clubs, and because you don't have a league office. It's not like USL or MLS where you've got a league office that coordinates the marketing, that coordinates that pumps cheerleads for the league. Let's just be honest. They overdo it. They cheerlead for the league. And then you got the teams that come out and do it. NISA, there's no real front office to be able to do it. To get them to update the website, to get them to put out, information, it's a struggle. It's almost like it's worse than NASL was back in the day. So if the league isn't going to do it here, you've got to have the clubs that take the initiative with it. And at this point, the clubs really haven't. You had Detroit City that did really well. You had the House that did really well. New Amsterdam, was good. Stumptown was excellent. Yeah, I love Stumptown for it here. Maryland Bobcats, awesome. Chattanooga, awesome. Cal United, is good, but LA Forest, Albanian, and I'm sorry if I'm chopping up that name off, formerly out for them down in San Diego. They got to improve. The other kicker is that there were supposed to be 4 expansion teams. So you're going to have Valley United out of Arizona, Phoenix, Arizona, Flower City out of Rochester, New York, Bay Cities was recently announced, out of Redwood City in California, and AC Syracuse Pulse. The branding on that sucks, but it is what it is. Out of Syracuse, so you had a really good rivalry set up between Rochester and Syracuse. You added another California team, especially with Oakland leaving. Kind of filled that up, fill that block. And Arizona coming in, I think, would have been a great addition, especially for the San Diego SoCal side. According to here, and like I said here, and this is a quote. It says there was an assumption that this year would see multiple expansion sides enter the league, but at least one club front office person has said that there are questions now. 4 teams announced they are kicking off, and maybe only one does. That's a problem. They also have some other expansion teams, Thousand Oaks in California and Savannah, Georgia. Also announced there's also rumors Atlanta Silverbacks is starting to post a little bit. They've been rumored, and then also, there's a couple other ideas floating around. So, to me, for NISA, if you look at the numbers. Yeah, Chattanooga, Maryland, Stars, Cal United, LA Force, Albanian. So you got 6 solid. Minimum is 8. So if you only get 1 expansion team, then you have to have New Amsterdam or the House in there to reach the 8. Now, if you can get the all 4 of the expansion teams, and you got to be careful with expansion teams. I lived this with, I went through this with NASL. You don't have teams come in for a year and then leave. It's not a good look. And then where are the Cosmos? Are they the new Rochester, or they're floating around, for here? This would be a perfect time for the Cosmos to come back and help stabilize NISA if they're coming back. Come on, Rocco. Either sell the club, because it is a storied club. There are fans even to this day that live and breathe Cosmos. You got to come back and do something with them. So that's it on NISA on here. I do want to thank Protagonist Soccer. Like I said here, if you can support them, I know they have a Patreon. Please help support them. But they put out a great piece to kind of a nugget of what they have. They also have the Knights of NISA podcast that does really well as a whole bunch of other podcasts on the Protagonist site here. So huge supporter of them. Like I said here, they do a wonderful job. Let's move next. MLS next. Let's take a look at that wonderful logo. Come on. Look, I'm not an MLS guy. I have a complicated relationship with MLS. I want ProRel. I think MLS controls soccer, U.S. soccer too much. I hate how they run things. The TAM GAM 22, under 22, the DPs. You almost need to take a college course to understand it. And even then, I don't know if you could do it in one college course. It's just way too complicated. So MLS Next is MLS's attempt to move into the lower leagues. To me, it's a reserve league. I know they have plans on saying, hey, that they're, that they're going to be having independence. Right now, they have one independent team, and that's the formerly Rochester Rhinos, Rochester, New York FC. Jamie Vardy's an owner on it. They're going to be playing up there in Rochester for out here. But basically the teams, kicking off for this year, you got, Chicago 2, Cincinnati 2, Columbus Crew 2, Fort Lauderdale CF, which is Inter Miami 2 team, New England Revolution 2, NYCFC 2, which is going to have their Orlando City B, Union 2, Toronto FC 2 is making the move from USL. You're going to have Colorado Rapids 2, Houston Dynamo 2, and Minnesota United 2, which I think is good for Minnesota United because they haven't done jack, for any academies or anything along those lines. So it'll be kind of interesting to see how they do. Houston Dynamo's, RGV and Houston Dynamo broke up a year ago. I might have to get to RGV at the end of this here. In USL Championship because that's another disaster. So actually, I might put that separate. You got the Rapids. You got North Texas SC, good club, FC Dallas system, moving over. Portland Timbers 2 took the year off from last year. Going to be playing in Hillsboro. They were going to rebrand. I don't know if they are. Real Monarchs, 2019 USL Championships champions. So real solid program, but they got real young. San Jose's bringing a team. Sporting Kansas City 2, Swope Park. St. Louis City is going to play a first year with John Hackworth as the coach. First year for that here. Tacoma Defiance moves down. Vancouver, the old Whitecaps 2. They haven't said that they're going to name them yet. And you notice that there's a couple of missing. So Loudoun United is staying in USL Championship for this year. New York Red Bulls is staying in the championship for this year. LA Galaxy 2, Los Dos is staying in the championship for this year. And Atlanta United 2 is staying in USL Championship for this year. However, next year, 2023, those 4 teams will be leaving USL Championship, moving over to MLS next. Also, Austin, Charlotte, LAFC, which right now kind of uses LV Lights for their second team, and Nashville will also be building a team, supposedly 2023 for that here. So you can tell that there's a lot. Basically, it's a reserve league. Now, this is where it gets a little bit interesting, and this is where it kind of has my intention. So when it comes to contracts, number one, season's supposed to start end of March. I don't know of a single player that's signed. And then you kind of ask your question, why? Well, number one, teams are signed not to MLS teams, but to the MLS Next team. So they're completely different contract-wise. And there's some interesting things with how they did that here. Number one, there's no salary cap. MLS has a salary cap, but MLS Next Pro does not. There's no minimum or maximum salary. So what that could mean is you could see teams that don't pay players, or say, hey, we'll do a bonus contract. Where if you reach 5 goals, 10 goals, you'll get through here, along those lines. And then on the flip side, you could get some young players from, South America, Europe, wherever in the world, say, hey, come over here. So they'll pay the fee to bring them in. You'll play in this quote unquote reserve league. And the players we're probably talking about are probably that 16 to 20 range here, I foresee in here. Because they do want to try to keep it under the age of 23 is my understanding here, 23, 24. So you could have some teams that, like there's a 16-year-old in Brazil that's looking to get signed by Man City or Bayern, or one of these. He's one of the top players in the world already at 16, or he has that talent to be. This will be very interesting, and then the type of players. So one's what they currently have, the academy or homegrown, which is going to probably be the majority of them. 2, players drafted in the super draft. But the third category that they have is one that I find very, very interesting, and especially if you're talking about an independent team going to this league. MLS teams will be able to, and this is per Jeff Reuter. He did an article on The Athletic. labeled MLS Next Pro to have no salary cap. Other key differences from MLS structures here. Jeff did the article on January 14th of 2022. For that here. Really great article here for it here on The Athletic. If you don't have a subscription, I recommend it. Jeff, does a great job covering USL and, other things here. But the third category is teams, and I'll read it here. As teams will be able to claim discovery priority on a number of players under the age of 24 who are neither homegrowns nor super draft selections. Teams used to have a limit of 3 such claims to make. However, sources expect this number to increase as gives them greater relevance to such priorities. So, reason why I say this is sneaky by MLS, and I don't know if it's good or bad yet. Because if you're putting a team in MLS Next Pro, you're aligning yourself with MLS and their systems and beliefs. It just is, just like, for here, and that may be an unfair statement, and I'll live with it if it is. But let's say you're an independent team. You discover a player, an MLS team can claim that player. So instead of that player being able to go out and sign for whatever MLS team that would give him the biggest signing, a MLS team could say, hey, no, we based on how the rules are, and this is MLS, so transparency isn't their best for that here. But to me, it takes an opportunity away from the players. Now, if the player goes overseas, not a big deal. Nothing's changing on that. In compensation-wise, if there's a transfer fee involved, like from a USL player to go to MLS, there could be a transfer fee involved. And right now, we're not talking about a huge amount, 50,000 less, 100,000 less, somewhere along those lines. But if they place a discovery right on there, does that, number one, does that team that discovered the player lose out on being able to collect a transfer fee? I don't know. It seems like it's if the rights have already been determined by that said team that put the right in and I don't think it's going to happen often, but it just rubs me the wrong way. And there's two ways to look at it. One, MLS is creating more opportunities for players to be seen, which is great. As a country as big as we are, getting young players, and that's what we're talking about mainly here with this league here. It seems like at this time it's going to be younger players. So for them to be able to get quality minutes, now you can argue about, hey, is the environment going to be good for them playing? Because I doubt you're going to see them playing in front of crowds. I just don't. You look at the MLS2 teams, even in USL Championship, they don't draw. They don't. It's been proven. What makes you think if they're playing Colorado Rapids 2's playing Houston Dynamo 2, are you really going to have fans turn out for that? Not a lot. I don't see it. Now, what will MLS is trying to tie this into their TV package coming up, and it's just a numbers game saying, hey, you're getting X number of tabs. So the final thought that I had here, USL Championship, RGVFC. Last year, you broke away from the Houston Dynamo. You got your independence, and you had a great leader in Ram Patel, and I understand he left midway through the year, for family purposes and to pursue other opportunities, but mainly family. I've talked with them off record, and it was a decision for him and his family foremost. He left. You still stayed solid, but you could see the warning signs. The season ends, you guys lose to us in the playoffs. So San Antonio FC beats RGV, which, as a SAFC fan, great. Poor Edson, on the Striker Texas podcast. But what's happened? It's January 21st. You haven't announced a single player yet. A single player, not one. Camp probably kicks off. You figure most teams are playing games second week in February. Some teams are playing games in a couple of days, like El Paso. So you figure camp start, for most teams is starting within the next 10 days, we'll say. How do you not have a single player announced? And I've talked to some, some of friends and down in RGV with the Stampede and down in the Valley podcast, which if you check it out as well. It's just crazy. You got NISA teams that are announcing. You got League Two teams that are announcing. The San Antonio Athenians of the UWS that plays, that plays for 6 to 8 weeks have announced players back. What are you doing? And I understand you have the Vipers. And the Vipers are good in the G League, which is basketball. You got to be better. You do. It's you have to be better. This is unacceptable. I'm wondering if they're coming out with a strategy. Hey, we're just going to announce everybody at once. It would be different. It would be interesting. Just to flood the system, saying, hey, here's our team. But it shows a lack of respect to the fans. How do you build excitement for the season? I know with San Antonio FC, we bother them every day. Hey, cup of coffee, Royce wearing his socks. Used to be Dennis Lamb with the siren helmet. There's things that you do to create activity, for there. And there's other avenues, marketing, across the valley down there. They said, hey, we're, 4 counties, 1 team. And yet, according to the last Down in the Valley episode, not a lot of marketing outside of the core area there. So RGV, step it up. You got to. It's embarrassing. You're a playoff team. You're a rival. I get that, but you got to be better. Well, it's 30 minutes. Longer than I thought. I'm going to try to be a lot better at getting these out for here. I'm not going to do the long ones. This will probably be the maximum. Just little quick hits and little ideas that pop through my crazy brain. Feedback's always welcome. But hope everybody has a great day. Stay warm, because I know here in San Antonio it's supposed to freeze tonight, and I know the rest of the country is pretty cold as well. But we're back. It's time for another season. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening.